I would dive through worlds in an ocean of gelatin just to braid your tail. By Bat Burrito. Even soulmates. But if you knew yours was out there, would you travel across countless galaxies just for one chance with them? Against all odds, one alien emperor and one talking horse get that once-in-a-lifetime chance. This is their story. Chapter 1. Allow me to change your world. Thousands of terrified eyes looked up to the sky at the projected image of a man that seemed larger than life. He blinked down at them with a smirk that radiated power, as the creatures could do nothing but stare up at his 4 eyes and pointed tendrils of hair, his upper body hidden in a luxurious fur coat. Each being, staring up at the mighty god, felt as though he was peering into their very soul. Etheria! The deity spoke with a sultry baritone from the sky, kneeling one knee forward and gesturing dramatically into the star-filled sky above him. He tipped the coat off one shoulder, the raised arm coming down to gesture at his own body. It's me, HorsePrime! He dipped the coat entirely, revealing his fishnet-clad leggings as he moved his hips from side to side, drawing out each word and running a hand down his chest. The shocking display of his beefy thighs sent a wave of gasps across the planet. Parents covered their children's eyes. Lovers expanded their free pass lists. Declarations of, "Damn, get me a slice of that cake!" were murmured in hushed voices. I'm sure you know why I'm here. 2 taloned hands appeared behind him in the projection, putting a chair between him before they disappeared from view. The one you call She-Ra has something I need. HorsePrime stood over the chair as he finished, the seat resting between his splayed thunder thighs and wrists draped over back, pushing his large mama milkers forward for the world to see. And so, he shimmied, whoever brings me She-Ra can motorboat me for 30 seconds. No tongue. Prime whipped the chair around, leaning back against it, Flashdance style. And if you don't hand her over in the next, let's say, 24 hours for the sake of making this whole ordeal really short, yes, you have 24 hours, or I'm going to turn this cat girl into a regular human. Catra was temporarily thrust into the frame, hissing, before being pulled back out of view. Cries of terror echoed across the land, their thirst temporarily quenched by this horrific threat. While Etheria had suffered greatly under Catra and the Horde, Catra was still super hot, and if she was no longer a cat girl, surely at least 50% less hot. Plus, a regular human named Catra would sound pretty stupid, or at least that's what Castaspella and Natasha were thinking as they stood in the rebellion's hideout. I'll be waiting for your call, Prime shouted as his head flew back. Another pair of hands appeared again, pouring a bucket of slime over HorsePrime as the transmission ended and his vulpurous form disappeared. Dora! What are we gonna do? This dumb sexy alien is making our cat girls less hot, and I don't have enough ice cream to deal with that! Mermista sighed and rolled on the ground because she was incapable of doing anything otherwise. Scorpia was weeping hysterically into Perfuma's noodle arms at the sheer notion. Frosta, waking up from her 5th heat-stroke nap, was wondering why she didn't pack any weather-appropriate clothing, or at least take off her coat. She didn't particularly care about the hotness of catgirls yet, but others had faith she would understand when she was a bit older. Entrapta opened her mouth to speak, but everyone started booing, which was not very respectful of them. Natasha and Spinnerella were probably there, but everyone kept forgetting. Bo put a hand on Adora's shoulder. What do you want to do? I'm not sure how we're going to go on with the less hot Catra. She's the glue holding us together. Twing! Adora nodded grimly. I'm gonna hand myself over. It's the only way to have a lesbian catgirl GF. I'm a hero. It's what I deserve. I think I'm gonna pass on the motorboating Prime, though. Or maybe I can auction it off to someone else. Adora, you can't! Bo's eyes widened. What if he cuts off your hairproof? or takes away your shoulder pads. We can't trust him. Twing! Why do you keep making that sound? Frosta asked. I figured it was time I got a catchphrase, Bo responded enthusiastically. You know, it's the sound an arrow makes when I shoot it from a bow. And gosh, I sure do love arrows. Twing! I think it sounds really cool and makes me more threatening. He was obviously right, and everyone agreed with him. I'm going to the rendezvous point, Adora stated, heading towards whatever direction that was. His message didn't mention a location, Perfuma wheezed out with her last breath, as Scorpia continued to suffocate her via the force of a sobbing hug. He messaged me the address on LinkedIn. Well, hopefully I won't die or whatever. See you guys later. Adora waved as she turned to go. No one offered to go with her, because that would cause more dialogue. As Adora flew away in the skiff she stole and fecked off to make sure her cat girl didn't get spayed, Swiftwind flew into the clearing, just missing her departure. Where have you been? Twing! Not relevant to the story. Love the catchphrase, by the way. Swiftwind replied, and everyone nodded enthusiastically once more. It was pretty much Bo's greatest decision. Where's Adora? She went to turn herself over to Prime, someone said. It doesn't matter who. Without her noble steed! Swiftwind was crushed. He hated to be left out. Swiftwind liked to think his need to be included started when he was just a wee colt. But since he'd only been sentient for about 2 years, that probably wasn't true. I must go to her! Everyone waved as he flew off, once again not offering to accompany him. Bo went back to painting pictures of glimmer on all his arrows, while Mermista was telling Entrapta how she wished Entrapta had stayed on Beast Island and died. Natasa was there, Frosta had passed out again, as had Perfuma from Scorpia's overwhelming embrace. Micah and Castaspella were working on designs for replacing the statue of Light Spinner in Mystacor. She-Ra walked into the throne room of the Fright Zone. Prime! She shouted, gripping her sword as she approached. Why, Adora, you got my message! The throne spun around to reveal HorsePrime seated on it, which Adora noticed was weird since it had never spun before. There were 2 clones standing on either side of the chair. Prime looked pleased for only a moment, his face quickly melting into a scowl. He rose from his seat and began descending the stairs, staring Adora intently in his eyes. You are alone? He peered behind her, brow ridge raising. Adora was confused. Prime seemed disappointed. She had thought this was how he wanted her, vulnerable and alone. It hadn't made sense for her to come without backup. But it was too late now. Prime huffed and walked right by her, pushing her out of the way. Where is he? He growled irritably, with a trace of something else. Where is who? Adora snapped. And where is Catra? I swear, if you do anything to her ears... Prime waved a hand, cutting her off. Please, Adora. Not everything is about you and your cat girlfriend. You can have her. I'm honestly be glad to get rid of her. She's kind of a brat. However, let us get back to the point. His focus returned to the blonde. Where is your steed? Adora raised a brow. So perplexed, she didn't even think about killing the guy, which wasn't very heroic of her. Swiftwind? What do you want him for? He's pretty useless. Adora, you cannot begin to comprehend. That was my understanding, that She-Ra always travels with an animal companion. Where is the steed in question? I will not ask again! You'll never get your hands on him, or anyone I care about. Except, Catra, who you do have your hands on, and that's why I'm here. I didn't tell anyone the location. I wanted to protect them. My friends are the... Adora, what did I just say? This is not about you. Prime advanced, leering down at her. Tell me where he is, or I will uncatch your Catra. Adora! A voice cried from above. Swiftwind glided into the sanctum from a hole that was conveniently in the ceiling. Adora, are you okay? I tracked you down via our sacred bond that I'm sure you didn't totally forget about. Swifty, you have to get out of here! You need... She was cut off as Prime raised a hand. Adora, leave us, won't you? While he addressed Adora, his eyes never left Swiftwind, and his voice seemed to drop a bit lower. I will have my brothers take you to Catra. He snapped his fingers as the clones approached her. Swiftwind, nervously. Adora, you're not going to leave me alone with this guy, are you? What if he suffocates me with his huge tits? Prime batted his eyes at the latter. Adora bit her lip and averted her gaze. She swallowed. I'm sorry, Swiftwind, but Catra, this could be my one chance to get laid. I have to go. She was already following the clones out of the sanctum door. I'll come back for you. Or, you can just fly away. It'll be fine. Probably. I love you. Bye. Swiftwind sighed. It hurt to be abandoned, left alone with this strange, yet strikingly beautiful man. But he could not blame Adora for leaving. Hoes before bros, after all. Prime began encircling him, his 4 eyes darting over Swiftwind's body. At last, his silky voice began. You are here before me. There was something heavy hanging in the air, the tension apparent, but Swiftwind didn't know what it meant. What are you going to do with Adora? He asked, making sure to keep his voice cool and level. Who? Prime answered, seemingly distracted with hooded eyes. Come on, seriously? She was just here. Miles of hair, 7 feet tall. Oh, right. Nothing. I couldn't care less about Adora and her feral cat. You're the real reason I'm here. Prime's voice came out as a smooth purr that vibrated in Swiftwind's ears. Prime advanced towards him, circling in a predatory way. But Swiftwind found himself oddly unafraid. If I'm the one you wanted? The horse asked. Then why did you send a message out asking for She-Ra? Prime waved his hand dismissively. I would have asked for you directly, but I didn't want to come on too strong. May I? Prime had hovered a hand over Swiftwind's luxurious mane, seemingly planning to stroke it. Swiftwind stammered out a confused, I guess? Why did he find himself wanting this? Swiftwind's stomach fluttered as Prime's huge hand came towards his head to run clawed fingers through the long, blood-orange hair. Swiftwind had been anxious of the mass of talons, but it felt amazing, actually. The rebellion had never combed their fingers through his mane, which was their loss. Swiftwind had used salon-recommended Redken products in his hair, which made it unbelievably soft. But what was this guy's goal? An entire army had been summoned, but Prime didn't even seem interested in destroying them or kidnapping Etheria's hero. Well, half of Etheria's hero duo. She-Ra was nothing without Swiftwind, and the world knew it. Swiftwind was about to open his mouth to ask what Prime had planned when the huge alien lowered his nasal ridge to Swiftwind's mane. Ah, Swiftwind! Prime inhaled deeply, his rich voice rumbling in Swiftwind's ear. You smell exquisite. Oh. Prime's intentions were immediately clear to Swiftwind. The tension in the air wordlessly explained. Swiftwind really should have been less surprised at this turn of events. He knew he possessed extremely erotic energy, and he often had to take to the sky to escape overzealous admirers and jilted lovers. He cleared his throat as Prime's face started moving closer to his alien eyes darting to Swiftwind's mouth. Listen, I know what this is about, and I'm flattered, Swiftwind stated plainly as he stepped away, putting some space between them so he could look Prime in the eyes. He wasn't sure which two to look at, so he went for the largest. However, How would it look? Me, the most admired baeling on the planet, dating an evil overlord? I mean, I have a really large reputation to uphold. I'm basically a god to these people. Prime had been hanging onto his every word, desperation in his eyes. Swiftwind, please, just give me a chance. He clasped to his hands and dropped to his knees in reverence. Just one date. Let me show you one night on the town, and if you're not interested, I'll leave and never return. Scout's honor. Swiftwind already knew he was going to accept. Of all his countless lovers, he had to admit HorsePrime was the most physically breathtaking, from his elegantly pointed ears to his lime gelatin-green eyes, to his butt that refused to quit. On one condition, Swiftwind stated, his eyes narrowing. Prime rose to his feet, all four eyes sparkling like a freshly poured glass of mountain dew. Name it! I will do anything that you ask. Show me that Adora is okay, Swiftwind replied, and I'm yours for one night only. Prime grinned broadly and snapped his metal-taloned fingers, and his attendants returned, followed by She-Ra, who was walking hand in hand with Catra, still looking like a cat, and Glimmer on either side. I'm here too, by the way, Glimmer said, and no one asked about me or threatened me publicly, but I was on Prime's ship with Catra this entire time. Thanks for noticing. What were you even doing there? Adora asked. Oh, I was just in the neighborhood when Catra got beamed up, Glimmer replied. Totally random. Yeah, Catra chimed in. We weren't on a romantic getaway or anything. They definitely were, but Adora was too relieved to put this together right now. She was finally reunited with Catra, and with Glimmer, who she definitely didn't forget about. But this story isn't about them, so Glimmer puffed the three of them back to the rebellion, where they probably had some three-way kisses, since Buck was cool with that. So, I've made dinner reservations at 8. Prime smiled warmly at Swiftwind, resisting the urge to bury his face in the horse's mane. So, shall I pick you up around 4? Swiftwind let out a short laugh. It was incredibly sexy, like the saxophone solo of laughs, and Prime blushed at the sound. A bit presumptuous you have already made the plans, Swiftwind said. I think you should probably know first that I'm a vegan. Prime cut him off, taking a strand of Swiftwind's mane and twirling it around his metal-encased finger. Do not worry, you magnificent creature. Prime knows all. Your dietary needs will be met and exceeded. Swiftwind's cheeks, or the equivalent, tinged with a bright pink, and he recessed a shoulder. Who are you? He whispered. Prime turned back to the throne with a sly grin. Until tonight, my dear heart. And with that, 3 beams of light appeared, slurping up Prime and his clones into the sky above. Swiftwind swallowed thickly, staring after Prime with what a therapist would probably call longing, as he flew up to get ready to be wined and dined, and he couldn't feel like his life was never going to be the same. Chapter 2. Life is a racetrack, and you make my heart go vroom vroom, baby. Sometimes a first date is all you need to realize you found your person. HorsePrime paced to and fro in front of the 6-story spinning walk-in closet that was the centerpiece of his personal quarters on his flagship. The walls and ceilings of the connected bedchambers were covered in mirrors, allowing him to scrutinize himself from every angle imaginable. And yet he couldn't decide on what to wear for his big date with Swiftwind. He sat down gracefully on his 12-foot by 12-foot vibrating bed and tapped a talon on his chin in thought. While Prime was an all-knowing creature with flawless taste and incredible tits, he understood that sometimes the input of others could help one clear their mind when making a difficult decision. Therefore, he did not give it a second thought. As he announced to his brothers via the hive mind, there would be a mandatory assembly in the ship's clone rehabilitation aquatic center. He called a dozen brothers into his chambers to roll out the clothing racks filled with luxurious clothing and accessories, and they trailed dutifully behind Prime as he made his way to the aquatic center. The cloning pods had been pushed back, and another platform raised to allow more standing room. A cover had also been drawn over the slimy green water in the center of the room that his brothers seemed so frightened of. He couldn't fathom why he had bred them with the swimming capabilities of Michael Phillips. No matter. 4 of his little brothers stayed in the hallway with Prime and his clothes, while the remaining attendants joined the hundreds of clones crammed into elevated platforms overlooking the sealed jello vat. Prime emerged from the shadows of the hallway, clad in his trademark G-string, fishnets, and fur coat he had worn to Etheria. He stood before his brothers in the center of the covered pool as the clones cried out to him with variation. He lifted a hand to silence them before speaking. "My beloved brothers, whom I would never harm," he began. "On this most sacred day, I will be granting you a one-time gift in order to better serve me." The clones waited with bated breath to hear how their lord would bless them. "To aid me in my selection of attire for the evening, for one night only, I will allow you to have an opinion." Prime turned back to the hallway of clothing racks, while his brothers chanted his name and applauded, his butt cheeks clapping from the vibrations of their worship as he walked away. Once back in the confines of the hallway, Prime pointed at the clones in succession as he spoke. "You, lights, you, music, you, makeup, and you get to dress me." 4 of them bowed and scurried off to prepare the ambience of the room, while the remaining brothers got to work on Prime's first look. He modelled dozens of flawless outfits as his adoring brothers screamed and cheered, several foaming at the mouth, and he tallied their reactions to each look in his mind. As the pièce de résistance, he prepared to walk out in one last outfit. A sulken charcoal tabard with a emerald green horde logo on the front, featuring a prominent thigh slit, revealing his right Herculean hammock, and just a hint of side cheek. There were cutouts at the side for his robust ribcage, and a generous boob window revealing just the right amount of his charming honka-chonkas. The look was brought to completion with a matching green thigh garter and a pair of lace-capped gloves and... "Are you wearing the brother who had done his makeup began with a gasp, looking down at Prime's feet. "The Chanel boots? Yes, I am," Prime replied with a confident smirk, and strode out into the center of the room. His appearance was met with uproarious screaming, and he watched as nosebleeds and fainting bodies of his brothers with pride. A pole descended from the ceiling, and he began his grand finale dance performance. He couldn't help chuckling gleefully as he thought about his upcoming date. "Swift Wind," he whispered under his breath, "you will become mine yet." "So, are you nervous?" Bo asked, with sparkling eyes, as he put the finishing touches on the braids on Swiftwind's mane. Swiftwind rolled his eyes. "I've been on 300 first dates, Bo. She rusty doesn't get pre-date jitters." He lifted a leg to inspect the glittery nail polish that Micah had coated his hooves on. "Do you need protection?" Micah asked from his seat on a nice boulder next to the horse. Swiftwind snorted. "Ew, Micah, on a first date? I'm not that kind of horse." Micah turned a bit green. I meant protection against a potential attack. Didn't this guy annihilate a bunch of planets or something? Swiftwind shook his head. No, he would never hurt me. I can just feel it. He looked away dreamily for a moment before looking back at Micah. Besides, as Queen Glimmer would say, better them than us. Adora joined the group and gave Swiftwind's neck a pat. It's almost time. Are you sure you want to do this? It's one date, he replied. And if I stand him up, he might blow up the planet or something? Swiftwind waited a good 15 minutes past the time he agreed to meet Prime to walk to the entrance of the rebellion camp. This was a common tactic he used on his dates. He liked to make them wait a little because he's worth it. The rebellion saw him as their unwavering leader, so he could never admit this to him. But he didn't have a few butterflies in his stomach over this particular evening. There was just something about HorsePrime that made Swiftwind's stomach do a few flips. Maybe it was those titanic tatas he always kept on display, or that astronomical ass. Well, no turning back now, he thought as he made it to the edge of the camp, already spying a galactic horde ship in the quickly diminishing distance. Swiftwind, my dear! HorsePrime's sullen voice called out to Swiftwind once he was in view. You look positively ravishing! Swiftwind put on a dazzling smile, looking up at the handsome alien up and down. Damn, he thick, he thought to himself. HorsePrime, nice to see you again. You don't look half bad yourself. In truth, Swiftwind thought he looked hot as hell. He had to try very hard to avert his gaze from Prime's bazooka, bazonka, MacBoyingtons. Shall we? Prime placed a gentle hand on Swiftwind's mane and gestured to the open ship with the other arm. Your chariot awaits. Swiftwind walked ahead of Prime up the ramp to his ship, his jaw dropping open at the sight that greeted him. Is that? A chair, Prime finished for him. A chair suited to your unique and exquisite physique. Tears formed in the horse's eyes as Prime gestured for him to sit down. No one, and not even Adora, had taken his desire for the long-coveted chair seriously. He had started to bring a bucket with him into meetings to sit on, thinking that would shed some light on how unfair it was he had nowhere to sit. However, the Alliance had laughed at him, and Frosta had even come up with the nickname Bucket Butt, which the other princesses were quick to pick up on as they continued their cruel mockery. Swiftwind sat gracefully upon the plush chair, taking great notice as it moulded his body perfectly, like some sort of divine horse-butt glove. HorsePrime had turned his back to the horse to provide coordinates to their clone chauffeur, who was wearing a shirt that said, Horny for Hordunkers, giving Swifty an uninterrupted view of Prime's delectable derriere. He quickly shifted his gaze as Prime turned back to face him. He needed to play it cool. Is the chair to your liking, my tasty little thoroughbred? Prime cooed, taking a seat across from Swiftwind as the ship began lifting into the air. Prime's gaze could have been described as undressing Swiftwind with his eyes, had the horse been wearing any clothes. Swifty forced his tears of joy back and schooled his face into a polite smile. It's perfection embodied in a chair. Not half bad. Thanks for this, HorsePrime. Prime chuckled and leaned forward, his torso tightens fully on display as he stroked a hand through the horse's mane. Please, let's not be so formal. My friends call me Primetime. The ship slowed down a short while later, descending into the fields of Plumeria as a bunch of stoned hippies screamed and scattered out of the way. Prime and Swiftwind exited the ship, with the former leading the way to a grassy-looking building with a large sign on top that read, Artichoke me daddy. Prime held open the tent flap for Swiftwind. After you. Shall we elegantly dine, my darling equine? As Swiftwind and Prime sat down, Swifty found himself in awe once again, Artichoke Me Daddy was the finest dining vegan restaurant on the entire planet, with over 5 varieties of organic apples served with or without the peel. As the apple juice started flowing, nerves were settled, and the conversation began flowing easily and rapidly. They discussed shared interests. You like fiction books? Like them? Try love them. I can't believe it. I've never met anyone else who likes fiction before. They laughed at each other's witty jokes. You almost dropped your fork. That's what I call a close call. Oh, you've got this. Thank you. You're really giving me peace of mind. They talked about their childhoods. I was born to a single mother, and it was hard for her, raising me alone in that barn, with nothing to sleep on but hay. The nights were long and cold, and then the day came, and those were hard too. God, I should call her! I cannot say that I relate, but you have my deepest sympathies. I can't imagine what you went through. I was regurgitated into matter some odd 8 billion light years ago, my vessel ever changing. I guess you could say I didn't really have a childhood, much less parents. Being an evil overlord is rewarding, but I did miss out on experiencing something irreplaceable. Playing stick and hoop, making mud pies. They shared secrets in hushed voices. Swiftwind, I'm going to tell you something I've never told anybody before. I've always wanted a pony, but birthdays, holidays, planetary annihilations came and went. Still no pony. Hey, it's okay. I'll be your pony tonight. So saddle up, cowboy. After dinner and hours of stimulating, roiling, passionate, borderline feral conversation, they went out to the Plumeria Square, alien arm over horse neck, to listen to a local concert. Prime's little brother was in a pedal band, Princess Hordak, with his fiancée. They listened to a few of the group's hits, such as Masked Herbate, Sexual, and You Oracallude My Stock, but decided to call it a night. While he was reluctant to end the evening, Swiftwind knew the entire alliance would be on edge, waiting for him to return with the juicy details. He tried to reach out to Adora a few times via their bond, but there was almost no signal in Plumeria. They kept up their conversation on the ride back to camp, having squished their chairs together and giggling like schoolchildren who just found out how to draw wieners. The descent to the dirt path came all too soon, and Prime walked Swiftwind to the edges of the camp, keeping a hand resting on the horse's firm back. Well, my pet, thank you for the most enchanting evening, Prime purred, holding out a hand. Swiftwind raised his hoof, placing it on the large clawed hand. Prime raised the hoof to his lips and kissed it gently. I had a really nice time, Swiftwind said nervously. I, assume the chair will be delivered to Bright Moon? It is already on the way. Good. Well, this is me, Swifty said, as he turned to go. And this is me, Prime replied. Oh, what? No, I mean, this is where I live. Temporarily, anyway. And this is where I live, too. In my heart, Prime insisted. And you live there, too. The words were too beautiful, and Swiftwind found himself melting. Oh, Prime time. Oh, Swiftwind, I can't play coy anymore, Prime shouted as he grabbed the sides of his dress and flapped the skirt around wildly, giving Swifty an excellent view of his hefty hips and the outline of his whordong through his G-string. I must have you, you intoxicating creature! Please, marry me! Be my co-emperor! Together, we can rule the galaxy! Prime dropped to his knees, hands on Swiftwind's front upper legs. Swiftwind was taken back as he stared at Prime's amazing awanga-bongas. Out of the dozens of marriage proposals he'd received, this was the only one he found tempting. Prime, this is all happening so fast. Can you give me the rest of the night to think about it? I've waited for you this long. I can wait another night. Prime stroked the side of Swiftwind's face, the horse nuzzling up against his palm. Then, with the final glance and twerk, Prime boarded the ship alone, while Swiftwind began clopping back to the camp. The bird horse slowed his steps until he came to a stop in front of the camp. He waited for a moment for the swarm of Alliance and their questions about his incredible evening, but no one had even noticed his return so far. He snorted and stamped his hooves before abruptly screaming at the top of his lungs, "I'm back! Pay attention to me!" A few heads poked out of the tents. Adora jogged over to him. "Hey, Swifty, how was it?" "Oh, Adora!" Swiftwind sighed dreamily. "I think I'm in love." "Really? Gross!" Catra stuck out her tongue as she came over and slapped Adora on the butt. The pair were wearing their most important couple matching pajamas. "He asked me to marry him, and I'm seriously considering it," Swiftwind replied, nervous for the response he would receive. However, Catra and Adora had started making out, so he moved on to the next closest person. Micah flashed him a thumbs up. "Dibs on best man!" "What?" Bo shrieked, voice crackling. "I should be best man! They literally call me Best Boy Bo!" "Gentlemen, there will be a place for all of you in the wedding," Swifty assured them. He sighed deeply, looking back at Adora. "What about it, Adora? I'll have to leave if I go through it. She needs me. I'm her loyal steed. You can see the pain in her eyes from here." It was hard to confirm the accuracy of the statement, as Adora's eyes were focused on Catra's pert little chest kittens. Adora finally pried herself away from Catra's clawed embrace and returned to the horse's side when she heard him aggressively clearing his throat in a manner that sounded like her name. "Swifty, it's okay. You have your own calling in life, and I understand." She patted his head affectionately. "Besides, King Micah and Entrapta brought back a dragon from Beast Island, and let's be real, that's way cooler than a talking horse." Swiftwind glanced up at the massive creature he somehow failed to notice the last several days. He had to admit, it looked dope as hell. Fair enough, I guess. He glanced lovingly around the rebellion camp at all his friends, who were, for the most part, not paying any attention at all, except for Micah and Bo, who were arguing over who got to hold the rings. Oh, how he would miss them and their adoration. "Seriously, Swiftwind, you could totally leave," Glimmer chimed in, each hand cupping the butt of the cat girl and the regular girl. "This would be actually great. Hordak is marrying Perfuma, so we'll have the alliance of the Etherean Horde, and your marriage to HorsePrime will give us an alliance with the Galactic Horde. Plus, you'll be gone, which is a win of its own. Any chance you could take Entrapta with you?" "Actually, I'm marrying your dad!" Entrapta exclaimed brightly to Glimmer, somehow dropping from above the group. "Which won't bring a new alliance, but it'll bring you a new mom." "Excuse me?" Swiftwind turned away from the murder Glimmer was about to commit, because, damn it, this wasn't about them. She focused back on Adora, whose butt was now free of Glimmer's grip. "Well, I guess I need to go call HorsePrime with good news," Swifty said, while Adora gave him an encouraging smile. "No need," a deep baritone voice shouted from above. A transparent pole filled with glowing green fluid descended from the sky as Marry You by pop sensation Bruno Mars started playing. Everyone emerged from their tents and looked up to see dozens of horde ships above, many equipped with speakers or launching confetti. Without warning, HorsePrime, dressed once more in his G-string, fishnets, and fur coat, descended the pole with some incredible moves that made Swiftwind's mouth go dry. He landed gracefully in front of the airplane, horse, the impact of his feet hitting the ground, causing tantalizing tatas and ample ass to ripple with sensuous power. "I heard everything. Swiftwind, I love you, you magnificent horse." "Prime time!" Swiftwind shouted, voice full of adoration. "I love you too!" The horse and the alien closed the short distance between them, sharing an intense, tongue-filled, passionate kiss that lasted 20 minutes. Swiftwind finally broke the kiss, as he was getting tired of hearing all the retching from the onlookers. Let's say we get out of here. He knelt down on all fours in front of Prime. Ride me like the pony you never got for your birthday. Prime slapped Swifty's robust rump as the Emperor launched one of his shapely legs completely parallel to his body in a vertical split, leaving none of his anatomy to the imagination, as the rebel camp gawked at the not-so-little Prime. He eased his leg over Swiftwind's sturdy back as he straddled him, settling firmly against the horse's body. He leaned down and whispered in Swiftwind's ear, "Shall we ride like the wind?" "Oh, I was born to be ridden," Swiftwind replied with a smirk as he stood up, his wings growing erect with his rising passion. "Giddy up!" Prime shouted, as they began to soar into the heavens above. He turned back to the bewildered crowd below and tossed up a middle finger. "Feck you, Shira!" "Bye, Dora!" Swiftwind called. "I'll see you at the wedding!" As the horse and the alien overlord flew off into the night sky, whispering about pink fuzzy spurs, there was nowhere in the universe they'd rather be. Except for maybe a bed, because they were about to have a ton of fun times.